To give you a little idea of the direction we are going to go, I've compiled a huge list of everything that Mother has said on Aurobindo. It's very vast and extremely beautiful. And when we finish that after some weeks, then I'll only have a month more here until I go back to the US. And then I'll be there for 6 months. And when I come back, we will take up Savitri from the very beginning. And we will look at Savitri in a different way, or many different ways. We will look at Savitri from the poet's view. We will look at Savitri from the spiritual realization view. We will look at Savitri from the story of this young woman who comes to realize that she is the Divine Mother. She is not aware of this at first. She's only aware that she's in love with this one man. So this is the physical story. Then we have to go from the physical story and go deeper and deeper and deeper into Savitri, into the mantric quality of Savitri. So it will be a long series. It may take us some months. But I promise you that it will be very special for you, because Mother will help us to understand Savitri in a way that we could not understand it with our minds. In fact, the mind should not even be involved in trying to understand Savitri. Although Sri Aurobindo called himself first a poet, before he even called himself a yogi, and he wrote Savitri over a long period of time. The first canto of Savitri he recast 16 times. So he would do it, and then he would rise to a higher plane of existence and experience, and he would redo it. Then he would do it again and again and again. And he says in his letters on Savitri that I have written Savitri to see how far spiritual experience could take me. It's the greatest work ever written, I promise you that. So today we'll begin with Aurobindo, because you're all Aurobildians. You need to know how Mother has envisioned Aurobindo. So first she says, Aurobindo wants to be a universal town where men and women of all countries are able to live in peace and progressive harmony. Progressive harmony. It doesn't say that the harmony is going to be immediate, and we know that it's not. Above all creeds, all politics, and all nationalities. See how wide Mother is. To live in peace and progressive harmony above all creeds, all politics, and all nationalities. Now, when she envisioned Aurobindo, she said that there would be pavilions to represent each country. So, in a specific pavilion, such as Japanese pavilion, we can take that. You could wear Japanese clothes. You could eat Japanese food. You would learn the Japanese language. You would begin to understand the beauty that is Japan. And likewise, each country that had a pavilion would offer their highest, even in food, cuisine, dress, music, dance, poetry, humanities. So you are at the forefront of this great adventure. In Savitri, Sri Aurobindo calls it the adventure of consciousness. But then he adds in that line, the adventure of consciousness and joy. Joy is the key thing. If we lose joy, there's no Auroville. The purpose of Auroville is to realize human unity. That was written in September 1965. That was 3 years before Auroville began. Who knows when Auroville began? What was the date?
Date 28th February 1968.
68, yes, yes. I was here. And Mother gave me permission to photograph the ceremony. And many of the pictures that you see in Auroville were from the slides that I took in 1968. It was an incredible experience. You know that 2 people from each nation were to bring the soil of their nation and put it in the urn. But many nations didn't send people, they just sent the soil. And so Mother chose Ashramites to represent that country. And then they brought to Mother a big problem. They said, Mother, these teenagers who've come, they're doing terrible things. They're drinking, they're smoking, and they're having relations. And Mother had one answer. She said, I'm only interested in the soil. She wanted the soil of all the countries to be united. I mean, when I first came to India and I stepped onto the soil off the airplane, spontaneously I bowed my head and I kissed the ground. That's what India meant to me. Yeah, America was the home of my body, but India is the home of my soul. And I could not do anything else. If I see someone throw a piece of trash on the ground, I'll pick it up. How can you disfigure Mother India? We should all do that. We should see that Mother India is kept clean. Now we get into a big discussion. Aurobillians and others asking Mother questions. And she is incredible. Who has taken the initiative for the construction of Auroville? Mother says, the Supreme Lord. Who participates in the financing of Auroville? Mother, the Supreme Lord. If one wants to live in Auroville, what does it imply for oneself? Mother says, to try to attain the supreme perfection. Many people have not even seen these things, and they're all so important for Auroville. Question: must one be a student of yoga in order to live in Auroville? Mother says, all life is yoga. Therefore, one cannot live without practicing the supreme yoga. So, in order to be here, we have to practice the Supreme Yoga. But what is this practice? There are no rules for the integral yoga. There are no guidelines. It doesn't say when to eat, when to sleep, when to pray, when to meditate. Nothing. Nothing is told us. He says, offer everything to Mother, and she will take care of it. Well, that's a lot. That's a lot. That means not only offering our thoughts, but our actions, our daily actions. When we take food, do we pray to her each time? That the food may be for our bodies to make them stronger for this long journey? When we read, do we read things that uplift us? When we speak to others, are we conscious that Mother is there in each of us? What will be the ashram's role in Aurobindo? Mother, whatever the Supreme Lord wants it to be. Will there be camping grounds in Aurobindo? See the questions that were asked to Mother. Mother, all things are as they should be, when they should be. This is interesting now. Very interesting. Will family life continue in Aurobindo? Mother, if one has not gone beyond that. Question, can one retain one's religion in Aurobindo? Mother, if one has not gone beyond that. Can one be an atheist in Aurobindo? Mother, if one has not gone beyond that. Will there be a social life in Aurobindo? Mother, if one has not gone beyond that. Will there be compulsory community activities in Aurobindo? Mother says, nothing is compulsory. Will money be used in Aurobindo? No. She's very clear. No. Aurobindo will have money relations only with the outside world. How will work be organized and distributed in Aurobindo? The Mother answers that very thoroughly. Money would no longer be the sovereign lord. Individual worth would have a far greater importance than that of material wealth and social standing. I read that again. Individual worth would have a far greater importance than that of material wealth and social standing. There, she's saying in Aurobindo, work would not be a way to earn one's living, but a way to express oneself and to develop one's capacities and possibilities while being of service to the community as a whole, which for its own part would provide for each individual's subsistence and sphere of action. See, we're so far from that right now, so far. But we'll get there. Nothing can stop Aurobindo, because it's a dream of the divine. Let me go through that again. There, work would not be a way to earn one's living, but a way to express oneself and to develop one's capacities and possibilities while being of service to the community as a whole, which for its part would provide for each individual's subsistence and sphere of action. I could be a little more specific on that. Let's say you're an artist, and that's what you can contribute. That would be accepted. And you would get what you need, what you required, not wanted. You would get your food, your lodging, your health care, etc. But it would never be based on desire, just on what you could give, and in return would be given to you whatever you needed. So young people, what would you get? And what would you give? It's a good question. Maybe you're interested in sports, maybe engineering, maybe, I don't know, what are you interested in? Anything, many things. Good. So you'll find as you grow up that there'll be one or two things that really challenge you and make you feel that this is my way. And nobody can tell you any different. No education can teach you that. Only you can find it here. And when you find it, that would be your gift to Aurobindo. And whatever you needed for your, mother uses the word sustenance, subsistence, and sphere of action. So let's say you were a musician. You would need maybe a piano, or maybe you would need a guitar or any other instrument. You would be given that. Then you would need food, clothing, etc. You would be given that. And in turn, you would give what you could. And that would be your music. And mother's so far ahead of everything. Each person, she says, is allowed full freedom. The external relations of residents in Aurobindo will be established for each one according to his personal aspiration and his activities within Aurobindo. Interesting statement. The external relations of residents in Aurobindo will be established for each one according to his personal aspiration and his activities within Aurobindo. So we see that some people would like to be on the committee that manages things in Aurobindo. Others might like to work in archives. Others might like to do physical work. Everything would be arranged according to personal aspiration and activities. Then the question, big question, who will own the land and buildings of Aurobindo? Mother, the Supreme Lord. And this is very interesting because some months ago, Melisha and I were photographing flowers, and we went to a place, and there was a beautiful garden there. And I was walking very carefully just to photograph a couple of things, and the lady came out and chased us out. This is my house, get out. She was very firm. In Aurobindo, in the middle of Aurobindo. We left without any hard feelings. What languages will be used for teaching is very interesting. Mother says, all the spoken languages of earth will be used for teaching. in 1965, they asked what will be the means of transport in Aurobindo. We do not know. Certainly, I think we can all agree that there are too many motorcycles, too much noise, too many other vehicles going through Aurobindo, buses, lorries, and all. Eventually, that will have to be taken care of, and it will be done. Now, Mother says something very important. Aurobindo is going well and is becoming more and more real. But its realization does not proceed in the usual human way. And it is more visible to the inner consciousness than to the outer eye. January 1966. Aurobindo had not begun yet. Essentially, 68 it was founded. Then they say to Mother, "You say that Aurobindo is a dream." Mother, yes, it is a dream of the Lord. And generally these dreams turn out to be true, much more true than the human so-called realities. Then she makes a very important statement that I'm sure all of you have heard. Humanity is not the last rung of the terrestrial creation. Evolution continues, and man will be surpassed. It is for each individual to know whether he wants to participate in the advent of the new species. It is for each individual to know. Then Mother continues, for those who are satisfied with the world as it is, Aurobindo obviously has no reason to exist. So most of the world is satisfied, but we can't really say that because there's so much poverty in the world, so many wars, so much evil and hatred. But still, what Mother is saying here, if you're satisfied with the world as it is, why are you here? We're all here because we're not satisfied with the outside world, and we want to make a difference. Now in 1966 again, she says, we would like to make Aurobindo the cradle of the Superman. Then she says again, Aurobindo should be at the service of truth beyond all social, political, and religious convictions. Very important statement. Aurobindo should be at the service of truth beyond all social, political, and religious convictions. Aurobindo is the effort towards peace in sincerity and truth. 20th of September, 1966. Mother, Aurobindo is an attempt towards world peace, friendship, fraternity, unity. And then this very powerful statement. As long as you are for some and against others, you are necessarily outside the truth. You should constantly keep goodwill and love in your heart, and let them pour out on all with tranquility and equality. How beautiful. She emphasizes goodwill often. You should constantly keep goodwill and love in your heart, and let them pour out on all with tranquility and equality. That was on 16th of December 1966. And then she says, in January 1967, Aurobindo, at last a place where will be able to think only of the future. How wonderful. Now, there was, when we first moved to Aurobindo, we lived at Promesse. And some of you know where Promesse is?
Yes.
It's the other entrance from the road where they put up the toll booth. Many, many Aurovillians wrote letters to the Department of Tamil Nadu Transportation and said, please don't put it there. And they wouldn't listen to them. So now you have to pay a toll when you get into Auroville. It's not much, but it's the idea of it. She says, message to be carved in stone and placed in or beside a lotus pond at Promesse. This is the message. Auroville is the shelter built for all those who want to hasten towards a future of knowledge, peace, and unity. 16 March 1967. You see, we're beginning to even feel the wideness of Auroville. How wide Mother has seen it. No rules. You know that she said no rules at first? You remember?
Yeah.
But she put one rule. She had to put one rule. Anyone knows?
No drugs.
No
drugs.
No drugs. She had to put that rule. Because it was a time when, or we could say hippies or whoever, saw Auroville as one of those places where you could do anything. And so there was a large influx of people who just wanted to smoke dope. Get away from the world. It was pretty easy here. It wasn't very costly. You could build a little place and then you always get food and that was it. You could live in the green belt. So she had to put that one rule, but otherwise there are no rules. Conditions for living in Auroville. This is very important. From the psychological point of view, the required conditions are: 1. To be convinced of the essential unity of mankind and to have the will to collaborate for the material realization of that unity. 2. To have the will to collaborate in all that furthers future realization. The material conditions will be worked out as the realization proceeds. So it's the realization first, and then the material conditions are worked out. So far, do we have any questions?
How did you face this when you when you came here in the early days? Without money, like to settle down? So what mindset you had when you come here? Because a big project without money, nothing, only mother. Just you came to that.
For me, it was easy. Mother invited me to come. She said, first of all, she said when we met her, I had met her many times before that, but then she said this one day, it was in December 68, and she said, you wouldn't like to come to Oroville in a few years? I feel you can do something there. And I said, Mother, whatever is your will. And then it was just a month or two later when I received a long letter from Udar. And he said, Mother wants you to prepare to come and build the gardens of the Machamandir. So I wrote back immediately. And I said, what does Mother want me to do? Physical work or study, go to college? Mother writes back, both. So I had to work during the day and go to college at night. But it was not to be a few years, because in 3 months, she sends me a short note, a biento, see you soon. I have to give up everything, sell everything, pack things that we could pack, and come here. The difficulties were extreme, no doubt. There was rarely any electricity, even in the summer. We, in May, I remember standing and looking at this wonderful imagination tree in full bloom by our pool. And we couldn't sleep at night, maybe 1 or 2 hours. We would soak a sheet in cold water and put it over us and sleep for an hour or two. That was it. The snakes were all over the place. We had a cow who had a beautiful calf, and it was killed by a crate when it was just a month or two old. People were bitten by snakes all over. But I always would call Mother and never had any fear of them. But the work was intense. You have to remember that Oroville was a desert. There were no trees. There were a couple palms where the Machamandir was going to be built, and that's it. I mean, it was so extraordinary as a desert that we could see Gingy looking in one direction and we could see the sea looking in another direction. Nothing there. I was a good friend of the different conservators of forests. One was Boja Shetty, another was Mr. Kundan, and a Muslim man who was also a director, chief director. And they wrote a letter to me and they said, in 50 years, Oroville will not be able to support human habitation.
This was in 68.
68, 69 more, 70. They
You
would
were
come
50 years.
frequently. Huh?
It's 50 years later.
Yeah. They would come and visit me because I kept introducing new plants, and they were so interested in that. And then they would take me on trips to the Western Ghats, and we would collect seeds for the Greenbelt. It was a wonderful relationship, and they wrote me many letters on the gardens and what, how they appreciated the work that was being done. It was being done against very severe conditions. First of all, the heat. Secondly, the insects. The insects, when we first started to grow plants, found a feast that they never had imagined, and they would wipe out our plants in a day or two that we would work for months to do. And even worse than that, the little boys would send their goats in, and the goats would just eat everything in a day. I mean, or their cows. And so the first time we caught a goat, the father came, the mother came, the uncles came, the aunts came, all in tears, just weeping profusely. Please give us the goat back. They will never come and bother you again. So I gave it back. The next day, goats came back. So I caught one, and I said to the little boy, if your parents want the goat back, it will be 25 rupees. And in those days, 25 rupees was a lot of money. A lot of money. They all came again, crying and everything, and I wouldn't move. I said, no, 25 rupees. And they paid it. And no goats ever came again. Never again we had the problem. Well, we put fences up, and they would break through the fences. And it was a constant battle, but Mother was with us. Every moment she was with us. And we could go to her, and we could ask her questions. And when I started really establishing the nursery and started planting in the Matrimandir, then I was getting these magnificent flowers and sending them to her every other day. And she named between 60 and 80 flowers from the Matrimandir nursery. I can tell you a few of them because I'll never forget them all my life. One was Remembrance of Sri Aurobindo. Another one was To Live Only for the Divine. And then I brought her the Italian basil, Joy of Union with the Divine. Oh, so many things. And, you know, I would take my motorcycle and put the flower in a box and take it to the ashram, give it to Tara, who is in charge of the New Delhi ashram, and she would take it up to Mother, and I would stand by the samadhi and listen to Mother's voice. And she would say, superb, magnifique. And she loved those big flowers, the hibiscus. They originally came from Hawaii, and she loved them so much. She named them Charm of Aurobindo, Realization of Aurobindo, Beauty of Aurobindo. And then she renamed them again, and telling Tara that we had to have a larger name, so she named them Beauty of the New Creation, Charm of the New Creation, Realization of the New Creation. So all of those hibiscus carry two names. Now what does that tell us? It tells us that Aurobindo is the new creation. Very simple. And there's another one too that she named, that was named long ago, many years ago. Grows wild in the scrub jungles of South India. She named it Miracle. Anybody know Miracle?
Yes.
The blue flower?
Yes.
You know, she gave it a second name?
Air
Air of Aurobindo. So the air of Aurobindo is a miracle.
In UK we'll find that lot.
Hmm?
UK, in London, it's a lot of bushes, miracle.
Where?
UK,
London.
London. London.
Really?
Yes.
That's amazing. Because it grows here in a very dry, hot climate. And London is just the opposite. Wet and cool. Maybe it's a different species, a different variety of it. That's what I think. Some varieties adapt to different climates. And we see this with all plants. There is a progressive adaptation of many species. And you can find some of them in cool climates and some of them in subtropical climates. But rarely do you find a flower in a temperate climate that will grow also in a tropical climate, very rare. Or it may have a very brief life. For example, a friend of mine brought tulips and crocuses and daffodils to the lake estate, Maturudian. And they said, how do we care for these, Nara? We've never done this. So I said, first thing you have to do is put them in the refrigerator for a few months, because they have to have a cold spell or they won't bloom. So they did that, and then they planted them, and they were starting to come up, and we got the hot spell, and that killed them all. Nothing survived. But I tell you an interesting story about roses. Parichand was the greatest ashram gardener ever. He was a giant, and his brother also, Rishabh Chand. They both came to live in the ashram. You heard of their names? No? Oh, you've heard. Okay. Oh, Parichand was joy itself. Every time you came to see him in his little office, which was just behind the school, no matter what problems you had or how difficult the week had been, you left there smiling and joyous. So, Mother told him, with these roses, you have to work and work and work to introduce them until it gets into the consciousness of the species that it can make it here. Very interesting statement. So I used to tell my plants, if I can make it here, you can too. And they would. Many of them would. Well, we've extended now, so we have to call it an evening. But I would like to read a little of Savitri, just for two. So the Lord is speaking to Savitri, and he says, now will I do in thee my marvelous works. I will fasten thy nature with my cords of strength, subdue to my delight thy spirit's limbs, and make thee a vivid knot of all my bliss, and build in thee my proud and crystal home. Thy days shall be my shafts of power and light, thy nights my starry mysteries of joy, and all my clouds lie tangled in thy hair, and all my springtides marry in thy mouth. O sunward, thou shalt raise the earth soul to light, and bring down God into the lives of men. Earth shall be my work chamber and my house, my garden of life, to plant the seed divine. Thank you all for coming. And we'll meet next week again. Continue our study of Mother's statements on Aurobindo. And if you have any questions during the week, you can give them to Uma or William. And if I can't answer them, I'll find some place in Mother and Sri Aurobindo for the answer. Namaste.